The day the sun vanished, nobody understood what they were seeing. At first, people thought it was just a strange eclipse. Morning had begun normally. Cities were waking up, traffic filling the streets, and sunlight shining across the oceans like any other day. Then the light dimmed. Not suddenly, but slowly. Like someone turning down a cosmic dial. In Tokyo, commuters looked up from crowded train platforms as shadows stretched across the buildings. In Paris, cafe owners paused mid-conversation as the sky faded from bright blue to an eerie gray. In New York, thousands of people stepped out of offices and apartments, staring upward in confusion. The sun was still there. But something was covering it. Within minutes, observatories around the world began transmitting urgent data. This isn't a lunar eclipse. It's impossible. Those objects, they're artificial. Satellites orbiting Earth sent back images that made scientists fall silent. Millions of enormous structures had appeared between Earth and the Sun. Ships. Alien ships. They formed a massive wall in space, a gigantic ring of dark metal and energy shields stretching across millions of kilometers. The structures were arranged perfectly, like pieces of a cosmic puzzle. Together they blocked most of the sunlight from reaching Earth. Across the planet, daylight faded into a strange twilight. Temperatures began dropping almost immediately. Solar power plants shut down. Weather satellites reported atmospheric changes happening faster than expected. People everywhere started asking the same question. Who did this? The answer arrived 20 minutes later. Every screen on Earth flickered. Phones. Televisions. Billboards. Military command displays. Even old analog radios began receiving a strange signal. The broadcast replaced every channel. Across the entire planet, humanity watched the same image. A towering alien figure stood inside a massive metallic chamber surrounded by stars. Its skin looked like polished stone, its eyes glowing faintly with cold intelligence. Behind it, massive windows revealed something terrifying. An entire fleet. Thousands, no, tens of thousands of alien ships floating silently in space. When the alien spoke, its voice echoed through every speaker on Earth. Species of Earth. The voice was calm, controlled, and utterly confident. Your star now belongs to the Dominion. Around the world, panic began spreading instantly. The alien continued speaking as if announcing something routine. Our fleet has established a solar containment blockade. The light of your star will no longer reach your world. Scientists watching the broadcast quickly understood what that meant. Without sunlight, Earth would begin cooling immediately. Within weeks, temperatures would plummet. Crops would fail. Ecosystems would collapse. Oceans would begin freezing from the poles outward. Human civilization would fall long before the planet became uninhabitable. The alien tilted its head slightly, almost like a teacher explaining something obvious. Your species will experience progressive planetary extinction within 41 standard days. Gasps echoed in homes, offices, and command centers across the world. But the alien wasn't finished. There is an alternative. The image behind the alien shifted, revealing massive industrial vessels hovering near the sun. Your oceans contain valuable chemical compounds. Your planet's orbit provides strategic control over several hyperspace routes. The alien's glowing eyes narrowed slightly. Surrender planetary resource authority to the Dominion. Submit to administrative oversight. And your star will be restored. Across the world, people stared at their screens in stunned silence. The alien gave a final warning. You possess no weapons capable of reaching our fleet. Your planet cannot prevent this outcome. The transmission ended. For several seconds, every screen on Earth remained dark. Then chaos began. Global emergency meetings started immediately. Missile silos opened across several nations. Within minutes, dozens of experimental orbital weapons launched toward space. They never even came close. The alien fleet was positioned far beyond the reach of Earth's current military systems. Human missiles burned through their fuel long before they reached the blockade. The Dominion ships didn't even react. It was like throwing rocks at the moon. Across the planet, fear spread faster than the darkness. Without sunlight, crops would die. Food systems would collapse. Entire nations would face starvation within weeks. Some leaders demanded immediate surrender. Others argued humanity should fight anyway. But no one could answer the same question. How do you fight an enemy you can't reach? Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, inside a classified command facility carved into solid stone, the world's top military strategists gathered around a massive holographic display. The projection showed Earth floating in shadow. A ring of alien ships surrounded the sun like a cage. The room buzzed with tense voices. We cannot reach them. Our orbital weapons are useless. If the temperature drops 5 degrees, global agriculture collapses. This is extinction. At the center of the room stood Admiral Daniel Hayes. Unlike the others, he wasn't arguing. He simply watched the holographic display silently. The planet turning slowly beneath a dim gray sky. A young scientist spoke nervously. Admiral, if we negotiate immediately, we might still. Hayes raised a hand. The room fell silent. He looked back up at the projection of the alien fleet. Then he asked a single question. Has the Dominion ever fought a war in darkness? The scientists exchanged confused looks. One astrophysicist shook her head slowly. No civilization in the galactic records operates in total darkness. Most species evolved on highlight worlds. They rely heavily on visual sensors and solar energy systems. Hayes nodded slightly. Then he finally smiled. A small, dangerous smile. Good. The officers around him stared in confusion. Hayes turned toward the control station behind him. Shut down external light emissions across all orbital assets. Deactivate civilian beacon networks. Switch Earth's defense grid to night operations. One officer frowned. Sir, that will make the planet almost invisible. Hayes nodded. Exactly. He stepped closer to the holographic image of the alien blockade. The sun, hidden behind thousands of Dominion warships. They think they brought darkness to Earth. The room remained silent. Then Admiral Hayes gave the order that would change the war. Activate Project Nightfall. Far above the planet, hidden inside the growing shadow of Earth, something ancient in human military planning finally woke up. New moon symbol rocket. For the Dominion fleet, the invasion of Earth had been almost disappointingly easy. Their war doctrine predicted panic, resistance, and chaotic retaliation from primitive species. Instead, the human response seemed quiet. Suspiciously quiet. From orbit, the blue planet beneath them had grown strangely dark. Entire continents that once glowed with city lights were now dim. Power signatures dropped across the globe. Satellite transmissions faded. Communication networks that had once flooded space with signals suddenly went silent. At first, Dominion commanders assumed their blockade had already crippled the human infrastructure. It made sense. Remove a civilization's sun and their systems would collapse quickly. But something about the data felt wrong. Inside the command chamber of the Dominion flagship Vorthal Ascendant, Fleet Overseer Karzel studied the tactical projections with growing irritation. The holographic display showed Earth rotating slowly beneath their fleet. But it was darker than expected. Far darker. Explain this, Karzel demanded. A navigation officer stepped forward nervously. Our scans indicate that the humans have deliberately shut down large portions of their electrical networks. Karzel's eyes narrowed. Why would they do that? Another officer spoke. They may be attempting to conserve energy without solar input. Karzel studied the display again. Earth looked almost primitive now. Cities that once burned brightly were now faint clusters of light. Entire regions had gone completely dark. But the Overseer had commanded too many wars to trust appearances. Enhance long-range sensor sweeps, Karzel ordered. Search for hidden power signatures. The Dominion sensors scanned the darkness surrounding the planet. At first they detected nothing unusual. Then the sensor officer froze. Overseer, I am detecting multiple cold objects in orbit. How many? The officer hesitated. Thousands. The chamber grew silent. Clarify, Karzel demanded. Human satellites, the officer replied slowly. But they are emitting almost no heat or signal energy. Karzel's claws tapped against the arm of his command throne. Stealth technology. Primitive species rarely developed effective stealth in space. It required precise heat control, electromagnetic suppression, and orbital camouflage. Yet thousands of objects were moving silently through Earth's shadow. Track them. We cannot, the officer admitted. They appear only briefly on passive scans before disappearing again. Karzel felt a faint ripple of unease. But he quickly dismissed it. Even if the humans possessed hidden satellites, they still had no way to reach the Dominion fleet. The blockade had been placed far beyond the range of human weapons. Maintain the formation, Karzel said calmly. Continue solar suppression. Below them, Earth remained trapped in twilight. But what the Dominion could not see was what was happening beneath the surface. Across the world, humanity had entered a state of controlled darkness. Cities shut off unnecessary lights. Industrial systems shifted to underground operations. Energy grids were reorganized to support military facilities instead of civilian comfort. For the first time in modern history, Earth had become a planet of shadows. And that was exactly what the humans wanted. Deep beneath the Arctic ice, hidden inside a cavern larger than a city, massive structures began waking up. Ancient defense installations that had never been publicly acknowledged. Gigantic rail systems powered by superconducting generators. Rows of launch platforms hidden beneath kilometers of frozen ocean. For decades they had been maintained quietly, their existence known only to a handful of governments. They were designed for one purpose: war in darkness. Across the facility, warning lights turned green one by one. Automated systems began loading weapons. Orbital launch tunnels opened slowly beneath the ice. A technician stared at the awakening systems with disbelief. "Sir, these platforms haven't been activated in 30 years. The base commander nodded. "Good thing we kept them ready." Thousands of kilometers away, beneath the Pacific Ocean, another hidden shipyard stirred to life. Massive underwater doors opened along the sea floor. Inside, sleek black spacecraft hung silently in dry docks. They were smaller than traditional warships. Built like predators instead of battleships. Their hulls absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Their engines were designed to produce almost no detectable heat. Human engineers had given them a simple nickname: Night Hunters. One by one, the vessels powered up. Pilots climbed into cockpits designed for silent warfare. Artificial intelligence systems began calculating orbital trajectories. Above the ocean, the dark sky revealed nothing. But beneath the waves, a hidden fleet was waking up. Meanwhile, far above the planet, something else activated. Thousands of satellites that had been drifting quietly in Earth's shadow suddenly came alive. They were old. Many had been launched decades earlier. But they had never transmitted signals. Never emitted active radar. Never revealed their presence. Their only purpose was to exist unseen. Each one now received the same command. Nightfall protocol activated. Solar panels folded inward. Sensor arrays switched to passive scanning. Stealth thrusters adjusted their orbit to positions between the Dominion fleet. Like silent observers, they spread across the darkness between the alien ships. Back in the underground command center beneath Colorado, Admiral Hayes watched the global tactical display update. Dots representing human assets appeared across the projection. Hidden satellites. Arctic launch platforms. Submerged shipyards. Stealth craft entering orbit. A young officer stared at the growing map with disbelief. "Sir, we had all of this ready." Hayes nodded calmly. "Humans have been planning for worst-case scenarios since the Cold War." The officer glanced at the projection of the Dominion fleet blocking the sun. "But they are still far out of range." Hayes smiled faintly. "For normal weapons." He tapped a control panel. The display zoomed out, showing the alien fleet floating against the darkness of space. Then it zoomed further, showing the massive shadow Earth cast behind it. An enormous cone of darkness stretching millions of kilometers into space. The officer suddenly understood. "They're inside our shadow." Hayes nodded. "Exactly." Human stealth systems had one massive advantage. They didn't try to hide in open space. They hid in darkness. And the Dominion had just created the largest shadow Earth had ever had. Hayes folded his arms. They thought blocking our sun would weaken us. He looked around the room. Instead of panic, the command staff now watched the tactical display with quiet anticipation. Turns out, Hayes said softly, they just turned the battlefield into our home turf. Far above Earth, in the cold darkness between stars, the first human stealth vessels slipped silently into orbit. The hunters had entered the night. New moon symbol rocket. The first Dominion ship disappeared 12 hours after Project Nightfall began. At first, no one noticed. The vessel Corthan 17 had been stationed along the outer edge of the solar blockade, part of a formation maintaining the artificial wall between Earth and its star. Its job was simple. Maintain position. Sustain the shield network. Prevent sunlight from reaching the planet below. Routine work. Then its signal vanished. Inside the Dominion flagship Vorthal Ascendant, a quiet alarm chimed. A sensor officer frowned at the console. Overseer, we've lost telemetry from Corthan 17. Fleet Overseer Carzel didn't look concerned. Mechanical failure? Possibly, the officer replied. We're attempting to re-establish contact. But the signal never returned. The ship had simply disappeared. Not destroyed. Not drifting. Gone. Carzel ordered a nearby vessel to move closer and investigate. The scout ship scanned the area where Corthan 17 had been stationed. Nothing remained. No debris. No radiation. No wreckage. Just empty space. The Dominion officers exchanged confused glances. Ships did not simply vanish. Still, the overseer dismissed it. Record the loss as technical malfunction. The fleet continued holding position. Below them, Earth remained dark. And silent. 6 hours later, another ship vanished. This time it was a patrol vessel moving between two larger blockade ships. One moment it was transmitting navigation data. The next moment the signal ended abruptly. No distress call. No explosion. Nothing. Inside the Dominion command chamber, tension began creeping into the air. 2 ships lost within the same cycle, a sensor officer reported. Carzel leaned forward slightly. Scan the region again. The sensors swept the area carefully. The only objects detected were Dominion vessels themselves, and the distant, shadowed planet below. But something strange appeared for only a fraction of a second. A faint thermal disturbance. Small. Fast. Then it vanished. Overseer, the officer said slowly, we detected brief motion between 2 of our ships. Identify it. We cannot. The signal disappeared before we could lock onto it. Carzel felt the first flicker of irritation. No species in this system possesses stealth technology capable of evading Dominion sensors. Understood, Overseer. Still, the officer didn't look convinced. Hours passed. Then another ship vanished. Then another. Within the next 12 hours, 7 Dominion vessels disappeared. The fleet began running constant scans. Sensor arrays swept every direction. Yet they found nothing. The darkness between the ships remained empty. But something was moving there. Something fast. Something invisible. Finally, one of the outer patrol ships detected it. For half a second. The ship's sensors picked up a faint gravitational distortion approaching rapidly from Earth's shadow. The patrol captain opened a channel. Unidentified object detected. Range, 800 kilometers. Closing fast. The object appeared on the screen as a flicker of warped starlight. Then it was gone again. The captain frowned. Prepare weapons. He never finished the sentence. From the darkness beside the patrol ship, a long metallic spear shot forward at impossible speed. A magnetic lance. It struck the Dominion ship directly through its central reactor. There was no explosion. No dramatic battle. The weapon simply punched through the hull, releasing a pulse of gravitational energy that collapsed the ship's internal systems instantly. The vessel went dark. Every system failed simultaneously. Life support. Engines. Weapons. Within seconds, the patrol ship drifted silently through space, dead. Several kilometers away, something moved quietly away from the wreck. A small human stealth craft. Barely larger than a transport shuttle. Its hull was covered in light-absorbing material that reflected almost nothing. Its engines produced almost no heat. Even its weapons fired without traditional energy signatures. Inside the cockpit, Lieutenant Marcus Cole watched the Dominion ship fade behind him. Target neutralized, he reported calmly. Back in the underground command center on Earth, Admiral Hayes watched the confirmation appear on the tactical display. A red icon representing the alien ship blinked out. The first kill had been successful. Hayes nodded slightly. Send in the next hunter. Back in orbit, the Dominion fleet was beginning to panic. Ships were disappearing faster now. Entire patrol routes were going silent. Commanders attempted to form tighter formations. But that only made things worse. Because now the human hunters could move between them more easily. The stealth vessels used the enormous shadow behind Earth as cover. They approached slowly, quietly, then struck with terrifying precision. Magnetic lances punched through hulls. Gravity torpedoes collapsed engines. Silent weapons designed not for spectacle, but for efficiency. Dominion ships vanished one after another. And the fleet still could not see the enemy. Inside the Vorthal Ascendant, Kazel slammed his claws against the command console. How many ships have we lost? The sensor officer answered nervously. 14 confirmed, possibly more. From what? The officer hesitated. We do not know. Kazel stared at the tactical display. The human planet remained below them, dark and quiet. No large fleets launching. No obvious weapons. Nothing. Yet ships kept disappearing. Then another sensor officer spoke suddenly. Overseer, we're detecting hundreds of small gravitational distortions moving through the fleet. How many? Unknown, possibly thousands. Kazel's stomach tightened. Show them. The holographic display shifted. Tiny distortions appeared across the fleet formation. Small. Fast. Moving between ships like predators weaving through a herd. The room grew silent. They are hunting us, the officer whispered. Kazel stared at the screen in disbelief. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds. Their fleets had crushed civilizations far more advanced than humanity. Yet here, in the cold darkness above a primitive planet, they were being hunted. And they couldn't even see their attackers. Far below, Earth rotated quietly beneath the artificial night. In the underground command center, Admiral Hayes studied the incoming reports. Dominion ships disappearing. Fleet formations collapsing. Confusion spreading across the alien armada. A young officer looked up from the tactical display. Sir, they still haven't detected our hunters. Hayes nodded. That's the problem with species that evolve under bright suns. He pointed at the massive shadow stretching behind Earth. They never learn how to fight in the dark. Above the planet, dozens more human stealth craft slipped silently into the battlefield. The hunt had only just begun. New moon symbol rocket. By the second day of the blockade, something had changed inside the Dominion fleet. At first it had been confusion. Ships disappearing. Sensors malfunctioning. Commanders assuming technical failures. But by the 48th hour, the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. They were under attack. And they had no idea by what. Inside the Dominion flagship Vorthal Ascendant, Fleet Overseer Kazel stared at the tactical display with growing fury. Red warning symbols covered the projection of the fleet. 23 ships had vanished. Patrol squadrons had stopped responding. Several communication relays had gone dark. And the most terrifying detail of all, there were still no confirmed visual contacts with the attackers. A sensor officer stepped forward. Overseer, another destroyer has been lost. Kazel's claws tightened around the armrest of his command throne. Cause? Unknown. The answer echoed through the chamber like an insult. The Dominion Navy had ruled dozens of star systems for centuries. Their fleets had crushed rebellions, destroyed pirate kingdoms, and defeated advanced alien civilizations. Yet now they were losing ships to an enemy they could not see. Kazel turned toward the sensor pit. Expand long-range scans. Use full-spectrum detection. Already attempted, Overseer. Then increase sensitivity. The officer hesitated. If we increase sensitivity further, the sensors will begin detecting our own ships as interference. Kazel snarled. Then filter them out. The sensors scanned the darkness again. For several long seconds, the display showed nothing but Dominion vessels floating in formation. Then something flickered. Tiny distortions appeared briefly between two cruisers. Small gravitational ripples. Gone almost immediately. The sensor officer's voice trembled. Multiple contacts, moving through the fleet. How many? I cannot determine. The officer adjusted the filters. The holographic map changed again. This time the distortions were clearer. Dozens of faint shapes. No. Hundreds. They moved quickly between the Dominion ships, weaving through the formation like shadows. Kazel stared at the display in disbelief. What are they? We believe they are small craft, the officer replied. Human vessels. Another officer added quietly. They appear to be using the planet's shadow as cover. The words hung in the air. The Dominion had never fought an enemy that used darkness like this. Most civilizations relied on energy signatures, heat emissions, and active radar. But the humans seemed to avoid all of it. Their ships barely registered on sensors. Their weapons produced almost no detectable radiation. They moved through the fleet like ghosts. Suddenly a warning alarm blared across the command chamber. Impact detected. Cruiser Velka 12 has lost propulsion. The tactical display showed the cruiser drifting helplessly. Moments earlier it had been fully operational. Now every system was dark. Another officer shouted. Multiple engine failures across the formation. On the screen, more ships began losing power. One after another. Not exploding. Simply dying. Human gravity torpedoes were collapsing the internal systems of Dominion vessels with terrifying efficiency. Ships that weighed millions of tons became lifeless metal husks within seconds. Panic began spreading across the fleet. Dominion captains started moving their ships closer together. They believed tighter formations would make it harder for the attackers to approach. Instead, it made the hunters' job easier. The human stealth craft now had more targets packed together. From the darkness behind Earth, more hunters arrived. Hundreds of sleek black vessels emerged from the planet's shadow. Their hulls absorbed the faint starlight around them. Their engines whispered silently through space. Inside one of the craft, Lieutenant Marcus Cole studied the Dominion formation. "They're grouping together," he said. The tactical AI responded calmly. Probability of successful strike increased by 37%. Cole smiled slightly. Good. He pressed the attack command. Several hunters accelerated silently toward the alien ships. From their undercarriages, long magnetic lances deployed. Precision weapons designed to penetrate even the strongest hulls. The first lance fired. A Dominion battlecruiser lost its reactor instantly. The second hunter launched a gravity torpedo. A carrier's engine core collapsed like a crushed star. All across the fleet, Dominion vessels were dying in silence. No dramatic explosions. Just darkness spreading from ship to ship. Inside the Vorthal Ascendant, Kazel's rage had turned into something colder. Fear. Report total losses, he demanded. The sensor officer swallowed. 31 confirmed vessels destroyed or disabled. And the attackers? Still undetected. Kazel stared at the holographic display. The human ships were still only visible as brief distortions in space. But their pattern had become obvious. They were surrounding the fleet. Ships approached from every direction of Earth's shadow. Like predators closing in on trapped prey. Kazel finally understood the trap. The Dominion fleet had positioned itself between Earth and the Sun. But by doing so, they had placed themselves inside the planet's massive shadow cone. A darkness stretching millions of kilometers into space. And the humans were using it perfectly. The Dominion had brought night to Earth. Now they were trapped inside it. Suddenly another alarm rang. Large-scale movement detected. The sensor officer's eyes widened. Thousands of objects launching from the planet. The holographic display zoomed out. Rising from Earth's shadow were entire waves of human vessels. Not just stealth hunters. Full squadrons. Attack ships. Drone swarms. Orbital strike platforms. All of them emerging silently from the darkness. The Dominion fleet was no longer being harassed. It was being surrounded. In the underground command center on Earth, Admiral Hayes watched the tactical display update. Blue symbols representing human forces now formed a massive ring around the alien fleet. An officer leaned toward him. "Sir, they're starting to realize." Hayes nodded slowly. "They should." He folded his arms and studied the battlefield. Above Earth, the Dominion fleet floated inside the deepest shadow the planet had ever cast. And every human vessel in that darkness was now armed. The officer beside him whispered, "Sir, the hunters have them completely boxed in." Hayes gave a quiet smile. "Good." He looked up at the display of the alien ships trapped in the darkness. "They came to block our sun." He paused. "Now let's show them what humans can do when the lights go out." New moon symbol rocket. On the third day of the invasion, the Dominion fleet finally understood the truth. They were losing. Inside the command chamber of the Vorthal Ascendant, Fleet Overseer Karzel stood motionless before the tactical display. The holographic projection looked nothing like it had when the invasion began. Before, the Dominion Armada had formed a perfect wall between Earth and its sun. Thousands of ships arranged in flawless formation. A symbol of absolute control. Now the formation was shattered. Dozens of Dominion vessels drifted lifelessly through space. Some had lost their reactors. Others had suffered complete system failure. Entire squadrons had gone silent. And everywhere across the map, tiny blue symbols representing human craft moved through the darkness. Silent. Unstoppable. The hunters had become an army. A sensor officer stepped forward slowly. "Overseer, updated casualty report." Karzel didn't turn. "Speak." 42 vessels destroyed or disabled. A heavy silence filled the chamber. That number alone would have been considered catastrophic in any Dominion campaign. But what made it worse was how it had happened. No fleet battles. No visible enemy. Just ships dying in darkness. "Enemy detection?" Karzel asked. The officer lowered his head. "Still minimal. Most human vessels remain undetectable except for brief gravitational distortions." Karzel stared at the projection of Earth below. The planet rotated quietly beneath them, its surface still dim under the artificial twilight. The humans had not attempted a direct assault. They had simply turned the darkness itself into a weapon. Another officer spoke. "Overseer, Dominion vessels are requesting permission to withdraw from blockade formation." The words felt like poison. Withdraw. The Dominion Navy did not retreat. Not from primitive worlds. Not from species that had barely reached interplanetary travel. But the evidence on the display was impossible to ignore. The longer they remained inside the shadow, the more ships they would lose. Karzel clenched his claws. "Prepare a broadcast." The officers around him froze. "Overseer." Karzel's voice was low and controlled. "Open a communication channel to the Human Command Authority." Minutes later, every communication system on Earth activated once again. Screens across the planet flickered to life. Homes. Military bases. Government command centers. The image that appeared this time looked very different from the first broadcast. The alien overseer still stood inside the Dominion flagship. But now the background behind him told another story. Damaged ships drifted outside the windows. Some vessels burned with failing energy cores. Others floated lifelessly in silence. And beyond them, human stealth craft moved through the darkness like shadows. Karzel spoke. "Human Command Authority, respond." Inside the underground command center beneath Colorado, Admiral Daniel Hayes watched the broadcast calmly. An officer looked toward him. "Sir, they're requesting direct communication." Hayes nodded. "Open the channel." The screen split in half. On one side stood the Dominion Overseer. On the other side appeared Admiral Hayes. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Karzel broke the silence. "You have demonstrated unexpected tactical capability." Hayes smiled slightly. Thank you. The alien's glowing eyes narrowed. Our fleet will withdraw the solar containment blockade. Across Earth, people began whispering in disbelief. Carzel continued. Your star will be restored. Hayes leaned forward slightly. And? The alien hesitated. Then said the words no Dominion commander had spoken in centuries. We request safe departure. In the command center, a few officers exchanged surprised glances. Hayes considered the request for a moment. On the tactical display behind him, the Dominion fleet remained surrounded by human forces. If he gave the order, the hunters could destroy them. Every ship, every weapon, the entire invasion force. But Hayes simply nodded. You may leave. Carzel looked genuinely surprised. You will not pursue. Hayes shook his head. No. The alien studied him carefully. Why? Hayes leaned back in his chair. Because the galaxy just learned something important. For a moment, Carzel said nothing. Then the overseer nodded once. The broadcast ended. Moments later, Dominion ships began moving. One by one, the massive vessels pulled away from their positions between Earth and the Sun. The blockade dissolved. The wall of alien ships slowly drifted aside. And for the first time in 3 days, sunlight touched Earth again. Across the planet, people ran outside into the streets. Cities erupted in cheers. Warm golden light spilled across oceans, mountains, and forests once more. The long artificial night was over. High above the planet, the remaining Dominion ships turned away from Earth and began accelerating toward deep space. Human stealth vessels did not follow. They simply watched from the shadows. Back in the underground command center, a young officer looked at Admiral Hayes. Sir, we could have destroyed them. Hayes nodded. Yes. Why didn't we? Hayes stood and walked toward the large viewing screen showing Earth slowly returning to daylight. Their fleet will tell the rest of the galaxy what happened here. The officer frowned slightly. What exactly happened? Hayes looked back at him. They tried to take away our sun. Outside the bunker, sunlight now filled the sky again. But there's something the Dominion didn't understand. He paused, then gave a quiet smile. You can take the sun away from humans. But darkness! His eyes turned toward the tactical display showing hundreds of human stealth craft fading back into Earth's shadow. That's where we're strongest. Far away in deep space, the retreating Dominion fleet carried one new entry in its military doctrine. A warning transmitted to every Dominion commander across the galaxy. Never fight humans in the dark. New moon symbol rocket.